Hello, welcome to Foreign Policy Focus. This is episode 137, and I am the show's host, Kyle. On today's episode of the show, I'm going to be discussing Trump making and breaking deals. And of course, this means I'm talking about North Korea, where there was big news on Friday with the Korean leaders getting together, and then the Iran nuclear agreement, where in the next couple of weeks, Trump is either going to have to recertify the sanctions relief on Iran or move the United States out of compliance with the nuclear agreement. So really important stuff going on here. For those of you who want to share the show, foreignpolicyfocus.libsy.com and libertarianinstitute.org. And I know a lot of you are going out there and sharing the show because the download numbers are going up and the show is growing. So I appreciate all of you who are doing that. I also have my new news website, immersionnews.com. So check that out for those of you who want to, get everything I talk about in today's show and a whole lot of other news I post on. All right, now for the Korea situation. Korea has been one of the topics where Trump seems somewhat erratic on, but I don't know if he's been quite as erratic as sometimes he's portrayed in the mainstream media. Of course, in the start of Trump's administration, you have the nerve agent attack on Kim Jong-un's half-brother, and there was actually a planned delegation of North Korean diplomats going to D.C. to talk to the Trump administration early in the days, and then that nerve agent attack happened, and the hots within Trump's administration, I feel especially, I noticed Nikki Haley really took the charge on this and scotched the thoughts from happening between the United States and the North Korea delegation. After that, you have the United States and South Korean war games, which simulate the invasion of North Korea, and of course that provokes a response from the North Koreans. This is something that happens almost every single year. North Korea's responses are typically, vocal threats, if you keep doing this, we're going to attack you, and also to conduct missile tests. And so during this time, it seemed that North Korea carried out a couple missile tests, a couple nuclear tests, and certainly made the claim, and some experts agree that North Korea had the capability or near the capability to deliver a hydrogen bomb to the United States. Other people feel that North Korea maybe doesn't have the technology to miniaturize a hydrogen bomb to fit on their ICBMs. There's some questions as to whether the new North Korean ICBMs have the tracking systems needed to actually hit a city target, and the heat shields for the reentry caps, because the ICBMs go up really high in upper levels of the atmosphere, then come back down. So they need to have special reentry caps. If you remember that, I believe it was the Columbia, maybe was the space shuttle that had some of the heat shields damaged during launch, and this ended up translating to the space shuttle burning up upon reentry. But there was real fear that North Korea has 30 to 60-ish nuclear weapons, some of them being hydrogen bombs, that even if they couldn't be delivered by an ICBM to the United States, could certainly be delivered to South Korea. Seoul is only about 30 miles from the DMZ, possibly Japan, possibly Guam. Of course, you have a massive U.S. base in Okinawa, Japan. And so really there's hundreds of thousands of American lives within the range of North Korea's nuclear weapons, even if they can't hit the United States. And then you have Hawaii as well. And you have really interesting things going on even within the Trump administration. Of course, at times you would have Rex Tillerson float the idea of talks without preconditions with North Korea, and then Trump come back and say, absolutely not, we're not going to do that. And other times, Trump would give Kim Jong-un some praise and offer him a chance to come to the table. And so I believe you had times where the North Koreans were looking to hire like Western think tanks to try to figure out what the hell Trump means by what he's saying. So some people, especially the pro-Trump people, like to suggest that this was a game that Trump was playing and it was very calculated, art of the deal kind of stuff. And then other people say he got lucky or whatever. Anyways, this is the way things plan out through most of 2017. And of course, in the later months of 2017, you have John Bolton writing an op-ed saying that the United States has the legal authority to carry out a first strike against North Korea, and I would guess carry out regime change and take out their nuclear sites, as North Korea presents an imminent threat to the United States because they have nuclear weapons and a method to deliver them. Others suggested that the United States may carry out what they called a bloody nose strike against North Korea as a way to intimidate the North Koreans into coming to the table. Now, at the beginning of 2018, you have something very interesting happen, and that is the Olympic Games occur in South Korea. Now, leading up to the Games, there was some real concerns on what was going to happen. The Games were going to occur during the time the United States was going to carry out their war games with South Korea, which of course I'm sure would have made other countries, not just North Korea, nervous for the U.S. to have such a large military presence at the games. But you had Kim Jong-un in his New Year's Day address to his country suggesting that maybe the North and South Koreans could get together and do something for the games and that North Korea would like to participate. Talks occur between North and South Korea and agreements occur for the North Koreans to send a delegation to the Winter Olympics, for the Koreans to appear at the opening ceremonies under a single banner and a single Korean flag. That was a very powerful moment. And a joint Korean hockey team as well as 2 Korean athletes participating in the game. Now, during this time, I would say the Hawks were kind of saying, well, these are just talks around athletes. We'll see what happens from here, blah, 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 blah. Now, something did happen from there, and that was these talks turned into talks on military issues and on diplomatic issues. And it wasn't just about sports anymore. This is a point that Ron Paul likes to make, is that he always thought that the Americans should have played more baseball with the Cubans. And, in a Rocky IV kind of moment, be the ways to thaw the ice between the opposing team. To play sports in high school and have been involved in competition. And certainly when you have a very hard fought match or whatever with your opponent and it's very close, you develop a mutual respect, and these things do have a way of promoting thoughts outside of just sports. And this is what happened in Korea. And so everybody who, played it down as, oh, these are just, meaningless gestures for the Olympics. I haven't seen many of those people publish follow-up articles saying, well, I was wrong and this was really meaningful. And so now maybe we need to find a way to play some kind of sports match against the Iranians and against the Cubans and against the Russians and against the Chinese and, work out any lasting issues that we have left. These talks eventually lead to a summit between North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in. Now, Moon Jae-in is an important figure in this, and the person I probably give the most credit to for the success of the talks so far between North and South Korea. Moon Jae-in has worked very hard, I feel, to get Trump to buy into these talks, has certainly played to Trump's ego in getting him to, take some credit for these talks. And so I think that has been very important. Moon Jae-in has been a long-time believer in North and South Korean peace and was a part of previous South Korean presidential administrations when the Sunshine Policy was effectively implemented. And of course, the Sunshine Policy was like a cultural thing to allow people who have been separated from their family members by the Korean War to get together and talk. And they had joint factories between the two countries. And it was supposed to be a way for, the people on each side of the border to meet their counterparts or whatever. Other things that happened in the lead up to the talks that I think were kind of important steps. A hotline has been set up between North and South Korea to allow the leaders of the countries to talk anytime they feel they need to. North Korea has agreed to end nuclear and missile testing and has so far held to their word on that. Now, again, not something you see mentioned very often is that it's been a long time now. It's been several months. I don't know if the North Koreans have carried out a missile test at all in 2018, but they're not getting credit to living up to the word on the no nuclear or missile testing. And South Korea turned off some of their propaganda speakers aimed at the North Korean troops and stuff like that. So the meeting occurs between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. They both step over to each other's sides of the border there. That was, I'm sure, very popular and powerful moments and pictures. During the summit, they had a couple different events planned, some being more ceremonial than others. They had a dinner planned. They planted a tree. At one point, they spent 20 minutes alone without their delegates, translators, whatever. And then there was also signing of the agreement, which I think has the most practical and important information there. The agreement is to move towards denuclearization and denuclearize the Korean Peninsula and bring peace to the Korean Peninsula. Now, I didn't read anything in there about unification of North and South Korea, which is a good thing because I think that if that were to happen, I really don't have a particular opinion on it. But if it were to happen, that seems like a bigger issue that would be way too much to address in this agreement that, first step is peace. Now, one of the things that came out of these talks is that the North Koreans are agreeing agreeing to gradual denuclearization. That means maybe they give up some missiles first. They destroy some test sites. They destroy some nuclear reactors. They limited the amount of nuclear waste or nuclear fuel they have in the country. And then they give up one nuke, and then they give up 10 nukes, and then they give up 20 nukes, and then they hold on to their last 2 or 3 until the last of the sanctions are withdrawn, and then they give up the rest of their nukes. And you kind of do it step by step, and everybody shows good faith because there's reasons to doubt on both sides. While the North Koreans certainly haven't been treated by their American counterparts in the past, there's also things that the North Koreans could have done to better work towards peace, no doubt about that. And more blatantly with the Americans, John Bolton really pushed North Korea out of the agreed framework and out of the non-proliferation treaty. And, you can see what's going on in Iran right now, where we're going back on that agreement in a lot of ways. And now, they don't even admit that Iran is violating the deal itself, just the spirit of it. And so both the United States and the North Koreans are going to need to show good faith. Now, the United States has demanded this stupid thing like rapid denuclearization. John Bolton himself called it Libyan denuclearization, where we send our aircraft carrier there and they load up all their nuclear missiles, all their equipment, everything the United States doesn't want them to have. They're going to load it up on our ship and we're going to take it away, and anything we can't get on the ship is going to be exploded. And if that's the U.S. expectation, I don't know if that might be a bridge expectation too far. Now, hopefully Mr. Dealmaker, Art of the Deal guy understands this and gets why this is way too much to ask for and why the Koreans would resist to it. I don't want to completely say that the North Koreans wouldn't agree to a more rapid denuclearization plan because I didn't think the North Koreans would agree to as many concessions as they have so far. Another key concession that the North Koreans made is that they're not demanding the removal of U.S. troops from South Korea, which you would think would make sense, because if North Korea gives up their nuclear program, then South Korea has the military edge. If a war was fought, the South Koreans win without the North Korean missile and nuclear weapons program. And I guess I can't guarantee that, but you would assume that they're the much more advanced military country. They have a United States-backed military, and also they have the United States Army that would come to their aid. It's not like we're going to take our aircraft carrier out of Okinawa, Japan. But the North Koreans have even given up on that and said that the troops could say, we just want an agreement for security. Another step that the North Koreans agree to there is that they're going to destroy their testing facilities, and they're willing to have Western media and experts see the demolition of the site. Now, I have read some reports that the Chinese recorded geological activity that they believe means that the sites have already caved in and are structurally unsound, and that the North Koreans couldn't use it anyways. However, I guess maybe one of the missing details in that first story is, and the North Koreans are saying, yeah, that did happen to one site, but we have 2 more that are fully functional. And I hope the North Koreans are being honest on this kind of stuff, just because the Hawks in the United States are going to look for any excuse. Even if the other 2 sites, aren't great nuclear testing sites, or they're, it turns out that Kim Jong-un is conflating or exaggerating a little bit here, they're going to look and they're going to prey on that kind of detail and fact. So hopefully he's being very honest and very correct in his detail. And so if we look at where we are now, I think things look pretty good moving into the Trump-Kim summit. That's supposed to happen end of May, early June. Hopefully the sooner the better. Of course, the fear there is still Pompeo and Bolton, who are new members to the Trump administration, will certainly be weighing heavily in the diplomatic efforts that the United States is making towards North Korea. Have been relative hots on the issue. Bolton much more so than Pompeo. Of course, Pompeo did meet Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, and I believe a picture was even released of that meeting. Now, at Pompeo's first press conference as Secretary of State in front of NATO, he was asked about that photo and just kind of what he thought of Kim Jong-un. Now, Pompeo, I guess, didn't want to go against his boss too much and kind of reluctantly said, well, I think he's serious about denuclearization, but he wouldn't say that he thought, Kim Jong-un was a competent man or not a crazy person, which has been the narrative about Kim Jong-un, and the very dangerous one. This idea that Kim Jong-un is somehow a crazy madman who's just looking to start a nuclear war to destroy the entire world, and is, just looking for the precise right combination of ways that he could strike South Korea, Japan, and the United States in order to win a war against us. I've read these kind of articles when there's really people out there who believe that Kim Jong-un is trying to win a war. And so, Pompeo coming out and saying, no, I think, Kim Jong-un's a pretty sharp guy, or I think something that would just acknowledge that, no, he's not an insane man would have been very helpful, but Pompeo didn't. So the other thing I want to talk about is this idea of the maximum pressure campaign and how much credit Trump should really be taking for all. Now, if you look at 2017, with, the campaign, he wasn't bad on Kim Jong-un, saying he thought maybe he could get along or make a deal. Once the actual presidency gets going, he's pretty hawkish and pretty violent on Twitter about North Korea. But his supporters try to spin this, and Trump and Pompeo have also both said that this is because the maximum pressure campaign is working. Now, I don't know if I could disprove that. I mean, maybe Kim Jong-un was really scared, either thinking that Trump was completely reckless, or because he thought that, Trump was going, and the maximum pressure campaign has deprived his country of so much economically that he has to give in and relent. And so this campaign has worked. I'm not quite sure if that's the case, and I'm going to just kind of lay out what other possibilities of what may have happened. But like I said, it's impossible to know, exactly what Kim Jong-un is thinking. Now, first of all, towards the end of last year, with the hydrogen bomb test and with the ICBM test, it seemed that Kim Jong-un had achieved enough of a nuclear-ish deterrent to make at least some people in America think that North Korea had the ability to deliver a hydrogen bomb to an American city. Now, there's some issues with that as far as the reentry caps go, as far as their ability to target, if they've actually miniaturized the hydrogen bomb, etc. And so, if you did believe that maybe Kim Jong-un had either achieved that nuclear deterrent or was just only one step away from it, maybe they were very close to having the blasting cap and just needed to do a single test to prove it, then from the North Korean position, you really don't have a better one. And so by sending the overture and the New Year's speech by Kim Jong-un, that seemed to be the first time that we really get the idea that North Korea is willing to come to the table, and it wasn't necessarily instigated by Trump or anybody within the Trump administration. And it's not necessarily, I don't think, because the North Koreans were in a super weak position. Like I said, they just achieved what at least some people calculated was weaponry to deliver a hydrogen bomb to the United States. The next thing I want to point out is that Trump was not optimistic, was not necessarily helpful during this whole process that has led up to the current Korean talks. If you look at kind of the start here with the talks around the games, Trump did agree to delay the U.S. war games, but didn't agree to cancel them or postpone them or anything like that. He was just, we're going to move them back a couple of weeks. It's not like there was a potential that they might not happen at all. As far as it goes, even while these talks have gone on, and even while North Korea has maintained their commitment to do no nuclear or missile testing, the United States has carried out the war games. Now they have scaled them back. There's not a full nuclear strike group within these war games like previous one, but nonetheless they have gone on. And so I think the credit that you could give Trump here, as far as it goes, is that he hasn't ruined the talks when he could have. I think if you're, we're living in 2002 and this is President Bush, Dick Cheney, and John Bolton, the deal gets blown up. And the talks don't even make it this far. And so, to Trump's credit, he hasn't destroyed the deal so far. That being said, that's not much to credit somebody with. And so, we can't know for sure if it was the maximum pressure campaign or not. I tend to think that it wasn't, and it was more Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un really pushing towards peace, realizing that the hostilities and war on the Korean Peninsula isn't preferable to any of them. And most, if not nearly all of them, will die. Last thing, the media reaction to this I thought has been kind of interesting. You have a large portion of people, especially the Hawks, coming out and saying, let's not get too excited, everyone. Let's not get too excited, everyone. Let's not get too excited, everyone. And, kind of saying that the other side is hysterically optimistic about this and that's destructive or whatever. I mean, I really don't see any harm in being optimistic about the whole thing in the first place. And yes, it's worth pointing out that, positive talks has happened between North and South Korea in the past, but this is the first time since the armistice that a North Korean leader has entered South Korea. And so that's a significant step that hasn't happened before. That hotline has been set up. Significant step that hasn't, been taken before. And, it seems that things have been going very, very positively, and they're really just trying to throw cold water on the whole thing. The other thing is that you have sites like CBS whoever runs CBS News Twitter is the biggest hawk in the world. Every single one of their tweets on the whole North Korea situation has mentioned that North Korea has not agreed to give up every single one of their nuclear weapons before talks have even began with the United States. It's crazy to me. And now, they're saying, well, they haven't given up the nukes yet. They haven't given up the nukes yet. It's like, yeah, the process really hasn't even begun, you moron. All right, I guess I should get on to the Iran stuff. May 12th is the day that Trump will either have to recertify the sanctions relief against Iran or they will snap back on. Now, the JCPOA, the Joint Congressional Plan of Action on Iran, is where the United States agreed to the P5+1 Nuclear Agreement between Iran, Germany, the United States, China, Russia, France, UK. And if I didn't already say Germany. Per this agreement, Iran destroyed its heavy water nuclear reactor, got rid of a lot of its centrifuges, put a cap on the amount of spent nuclear fuel the country holds, and has agreed to allow an unprecedented level of IAEA surveillance of all their nuclear sites. And they have also set up a process where if anybody proposes that there's evidence that Iran is cheating on the nuclear agreement, all the United States has to do is get Germany, UK, and France to go along and believe the evidence is correct as well. And then the IAEA can inspect any site within Iran. I believe it was Colonel Wilkerson who effectively said that what the Iran deal did is it moved Iran away from being able to produce a nuclear weapon if they so choose, from taking a couple months to taking over a year. Now, one of the things is in the world, nuclear weapons do exist, and I think people have generally figured out how to go from having nuclear fuel to a nuclear weapon, being able to turn that into a bomb. Now, I'm sure there's some ratios and specifications and stuff that would require a couple tests to exactly line up to make the biggest boom. But at the end of the day, with enough waste and with enough centrifuges, enough money to dedicate to it, you can make a nuclear weapon. However, doing things like having light water reactors instead of heavy water reactors, limiting the amount of fuel, limiting the amount of centrifuges, greatly expands the amount of time it would take a country to develop, a civilian nuclear program into a nuclear weapons program. And of course, everything with the Iran nuclear agreement and all the arguments that everybody makes against it assumes that Iran actually wants nuclear weapons. However, if you have any questions on this, Google Gareth Porter, Scott Horton, and Iran, and you'll just find a whole archive of articles. I'm pretty sure they've covered every point in Gareth's book on the deception behind the fact that Iran has a nuclear weapons program, as has been pursuing nuclear weapons at least since 2003. They absolutely have been not. And so, despite how good this deal really is, there's complete opposition to it from the Trump administration and from the right. Now, I'm pretty sure it's just because Obama made the deal, to be honest. And had Trump made this deal, it would be the best deal in the world. I want to point to a couple things that I think are evidence that Trump has no idea of what the deal actually is and what was actually in it. In recent statements he made at a presser with French President Macron, Trump talked about the cash that the United States gave Iran in exchange for this deal being put into place. Now, that money was seized from Iran. Iran had agreed to buy weapons from the United States and had paid for those weapons up front. Then the Iranian Revolution happened, and the United States just kept the money and didn't provide the weapons because Iran was now an enemy. Well, that money is the Iranian money, and international courts had ruled so, and had ruled the United States had to return that money to Iran. And so, in exchange for following that international court ruling, Iran agreed to the nuclear agreement. I mean, this seems like a slam dunk for the United States. Iran's also poured concrete into their heavy water reactor and has destroyed their centrifuge. And so Iran gave a lot up front on this. But Trump just talked about the cash like it was a payment, like it was a bribe to the Iranians, and that clearly wasn't the case. Another thing that Trump mentions in that presser, and I brought this up, I recorded an episode of Around the Empire with Will Porter was the other guest on that show. Really good. Thank you so much to Joanne Leone, who had us on the show with her. I really have I've talked about that show a lot on my show. So I'm sure those of you who listen a lot know I really enjoy the show. But looking at the guest list for that show, and then my name will soon be included with that, it really feels like an honor to me. But to get back to the whole thing, the point I made is that in that presser, Trump makes the point that the Iran deal didn't solve the conflict in Yemen. And this is a real head scratcher because the conflict in Yemen didn't start until after the nuclear agreement and the JOPCA was already passed. And even worse, the conflict in Yemen, and this was said by Samantha Power, the then U.S. ambassador to the UN, to the New York Times, that the reason the United States was supporting the Saudi war in Yemen was to placate the Saudis, because the Saudis were concerned that the United States was moving closer to Iran with the Iranian nuclear agreement. And so Trump knows so little about the Iranian nuclear agreement that he's complaining that the agreement didn't solve a problem that the agreement itself created. It's insane. Now, the Western countries, the United States, France, and Germany, because Trump also had Merkel to the United States, and they did press her as well, has talked about this idea of having an add-on agreement with Iran that would basically is like a massive Middle East peace deal, and seems inexplicable to me. That agreement would apparently solve the Iranian missile program problem, contain Iran, and then bring an end to the conflicts in Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. Now, this is something that we talked a lot about on the Around the Empire podcast, so I don't want to get into it too much, but just realizing how complex each of these individual conflicts are, and thinking that you're going to put it all into one deal along with the Iranian missile program and along with, ending their support for Hezbollah is completely insane. It's just not going to happen. Now, a couple things about the Iranian agreement before I lead everybody too far down the road to thinking that Trump is definitely going to get rid of it. Mattis said to Congress that the United States is better with it than without it. Of course, the Iranians aren't actually violating the agreement, and the Americans are. Part of the Iranian nuclear agreement was that the Americans can't go out there and constantly threaten to put sanctions on Iran and keep everybody from doing business with the Iranians, which is what Trump and the Americans have been doing since he took office. And so that's been a real problem as far as America not really following the deal. However, Iran has followed the deal. There's been a couple times that they were maybe over their limit of spent nuclear fuel that they had, but they sold that off pretty quickly, and it didn't seem to be a large issue. And then Gareth Porter kind of points out, and he writes this good article that I'll link to in the show notes page, that Trump doesn't have a lot of options here. I mean, what's he going to do? Pick a fight and start a war with Iran in the Middle East? I would imagine that when Mattis starts laying out the options for Trump and explaining what the United States could possibly do militarily against Iran and how all those options are really terrible, I can't imagine that Trump's going to go along with them. And so maybe here we do see Trump give in and have to recertify this deal. And hopefully, maybe for Trump, he's able to kind of sync it up with the time for the peace agreement with Kim Jong-un, assuming that we continue to move down the right direction there. Because, that's certainly not a foregone conclusion. And like I said, Pompeo and Bolton could really mess that up, but maybe Trump could kind of cover up his embarrassment of not backing out of the Iran deal like he said over and over he was going to do with an agreement with Kim Jong-un. All right, so that's where I'm going to wrap up the show for today. Things could go good here, things could go bad here. Both of these deals, I feel like there's a lot of flux and limbo to it. The momentum seems to be peace in Korea and less so in Iran. For those of you who want to share the show, foreignpolicyfocus.libsyn.com, libertarianinstitute.org, Facebook, it's Libertarian Union. There's a lot of great podcasts in the Libertarian Union with me. A new one, just added, and so everybody should check out that Facebook page. I'm on Twitter at KYAAALE. Immersion News on YouTube, Facebook, and Minds. Immersion News is, of course, the name of my brand new news website. And then I also write the daily news roundup at libertarianinstitute.org.